Yeah, because I could have jumped off of this, I was just on a Zoom for the 7th Congressional District GOP.
That's almost bad.
And I mean, like, every single question is like just me getting beat up from both sides. And so I thought to myself, if I leave, no, it's in your car. I thought to myself, if I leave, this is literally just going to be a, attack Meshawn fest. So I apologize for being late, but I felt like I needed to stay on at least for 2 more questions. So anyway, I don't know.
We're having a great time just answering questions. Fire away, guys, ask anything you want.
Do you have a little stump speech or something?
Yeah,
that you
let
want to
me
start with?
just start with, because I don't know everybody here. I know some of you. I know about half the people in this room. I've been involved in politics for a long time. I am at least 20 years as a delegate. I just found out that you can only go back and actually search how long you've been a delegate to 2014. But at least 20 years I've been a precinct delegate. I've served in a lot of leadership roles within the party. I worked my way up because of the Trump campaign in 2016 to be the 11th Congressional District Chair, which was a great experience. Taught me about state party, went on to be a member of state party a couple of times, and then served as co-chair of the party with Ron Weiser not this past cycle, but the cycle before that. When Ron Weiser asked me to be co-chair, I knew I was creating a lot of political capital to do that, because I was a very grassroots activist person, and he was sort of like the evil emperor establishment, and I knew that he needed me in that role to win, but I also didn't feel confident enough at that time to run for that position myself, because I really didn't know enough about the party and what it does, and I didn't want to make the mistake of taking on that position without knowing. So I thought this would be a good way for me to learn about it, and it was. Ron was generous with me with meeting with donors, with sending me to pick out checks, letting me sit in on meetings. I had an office in the building, which I think sort of irritated him. Right after we won, I don't think he thought that I was going to plan on moving into the office, but I did. I told him right away, if you were looking for a co-chair to do opening prayers at Lincoln Day dinners, then I'm not your girl. I want to work and I want to learn what the party does. It was a tremendous experience, because a lot of people think the party does a lot of things that it really can't, and it really doesn't. And that was one of the things that it taught me. I'll never forget, it was 2 weeks in, and I had delegates blowing up my phone angry because they had just looked at campaign finance statements and saw that Ron Weiser had donated to Peter Meyer and Fred Upton. And so people that were my friends and supporters were furious with me. How can our chair do this? How can our chair, donate to these never Trumpers, these people that, just spoke against President Trump? And I went into his office and I sat down and I asked him that question. I was really angry. And he looked at me in total confusion, and he said, Meshawn, I max out to every Republican congressman, every cycle, every campaign finance statement. He said, my job is to elect Republicans. It's not to look at their voting records or look at their social media and decide how they vote. He said, we need in the party people like you who are purifying and trying to make better candidates, and we also need people in the party like me, who are willing to write really big checks and support campaigns no matter what. Our job is just to get Republicans across the finish line. And so that was kind of a big eye-opening moment for me, just about being involved in Republicans, because my husband and I have always been very aggressively far-right, very pro-Trump part of the party. But I also recognize that if I'm in this role as state party chair, that it's my job to fight hard for all of our candidates, get them through the primaries, and then no matter who those candidates are, fight very hard for them to win in the general election. And so I can promise you as your chair that is something that I will do. I also have great business experience. We've been entrepreneurs our entire lives. We own a very successful business that I'm grateful sort of runs itself, which has enabled me to spend almost all of my time full-time working in politics. I've been very involved in the Trump campaign in 2016, then in 2020 as sat on the National Advisory Board of Women for Trump, and then this past cycle, very involved in outreach and coalitions and organizing events. I got brought on the last 2 months of the campaign actually as paid staff, first time I've ever been paid by the Trump campaign in the 10 years that I've worked for them. I believe I'm totally in the right place at this time with the knowledge of how the party works, but more importantly, with my relationship with President Trump and his whole team. I feel like that will be very important in this cycle. All eyes are on Michigan because of this open Senate seat. And because of that, having the conduit of myself with President Trump and his team, I think will be really helpful in Michigan. So that's sort of the me speech. Hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Does anybody have questions?
Yeah.
Yes. Everybody will have a question. Do you guys mind if I said?
No,
No,
please.
please do. I've asked this to everybody so far, but, and I mentioned it to Matt when he come in, but the Constitution is the bedrock of America. It's the supreme law of the land. And so oftentimes, both sides, they don't adhere to their oath, right? And that oath, to me, that's who I am. I took it several times, right? If I foregone my oath,
You signed up to die for it.
people die, right? If a politician forgoes their oath, $3 million gets sent to a sewer project.
Right.
What does $5 million buy? What does $10 million buy, right? So we in Berry County are holding them accountable, right? And we brought them to closed session. Problem is they go and vote again for another legislation that has gun rights in it, right? So we, the people, are trying to do what we're doing, but I'm asking the state party and the chair, when that happens to our candidates, right, that they do that, because you just said, well, if they're red, we gotta vote them in. Well, I don't agree with that. That's me, but I'm on the outside. And Angela's taught me a lot about politics. Oh, you gotta do this, and that's why I won't be a politician. But
That's why it should be a politician.
no. But can the state chair and the state committee start going to Lansing when these people, and again, I mentioned this earlier, if it's a moral thing, you gotta deal with him, right? But if it's a constitutional thing and you don't uphold your oath, you should be held accountable. You do it again, you should be censored.
Well, part of the problem is when you say your oath, people use the nuance of the Constitution, and your representatives will use the argument that not all of their constituency believes the way you believe. They constantly will use that. But I can't answer your question. And I'm not gonna tell you things to make you vote for me. I don't know how my opposition would answer this question. I've sat on different roles within the party. I was at one time the president of the Michigan Conservative Coalition. That organization was all about electing the farthest right, the most Trump candidates. We were brutal to people in the primaries. I've spoken out against elected officials in that role very many times, which is why I'm struggling to win in this role, because that's exactly what my opponents are using against me. That's exactly what I just heard on this phone call. Meshawn plays in primaries. Meshawn works against candidates. There are rules for all of us within the Republican Party. External organizations, outside groups that force people to be held, constituents that are vocal and demand that their elected officials be held accountable. That's really important. It isn't the position. The parties should be doing one thing. They should be messaging against Democrats, not against each other, pounding the Democrats this cycle, raising money so that we can effectively message against Democrats and help support our Republican candidates that win in the primaries to go on and win in the general election. So that's the role this time I am going to be playing in. If the party were doing what you're saying, if they spoke out against Republican officials, they would immediately be in opposition with the two other organizations in Lansing, which is the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans, because they are only caring about re-electing senators and House members. It's the only thing they care about. And so these three entities have to either have a relationship and work together, or it's fragmented. This past cycle, what you saw kind of behind the scenes, I don't know if you saw it, was there was a complete rift in that union. And that's why there was a mistrust with the party with so many of the donors, but more importantly, there was now a mistrust with the party with the Trump campaign, because they're sitting on the outside and all they know is, wow, it looks, from what we're hearing, Michigan is in absolute chaos. And, so that's why you saw the president and his team sort of weigh in on that election. I think it was painful, brutal, you know, I was part of it, in that we've known Christina a really long time. I have no idea where everybody is on that, but, you know, we knew her a very long time. We did not support her as chair, but the minute she was chair, I offered myself to her, like, I can't even tell you. I mean, I could open my phone and show you unread, unresponded text messages and phone calls for a very long time. We also donated to her, by being donors to the Mackinac Conference the minute she announced it. So we tried to be helpful, and we were unanswered. And so it was a sad time in our party. Pete came in at a difficult time. He did a good job. A ton of money passed through our party this last campaign, and he managed it well. And I'm grateful to him for that. But I feel like I have the experience because I've been through that and watched that.
Explain how the passing money works.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so, in that vein, there are still, a lot of Christina supporters in the state party. And I know, you know, several of the last state committee meetings have been just disgraceful in my opinion, because, you know, they just want to disrupt everything, you know. I tried really hard working with some of them in this, before the Frankenmuth meeting, to try to come up with some sort of compromise on the rules. Got a lot of feedback, but no, and compromise isn't a good word in my opinion, but sometimes you gotta go there, right? They would not budge an inch, nothing. If we didn't do exactly what they wanted with, you know, no tabulators, you know, a very, very small dollar amount for the chairs to get in the race, they would not compromise whatsoever. And even at this special meeting last weekend, you know, they just wanted to keep going back to, Christina did no wrong, Christina did no wrong, you guys, it was a coup, you know, you violated the bylaws, you violated Robert's rules, and we know that we didn't. I spent hours with several others, hours now, maybe 100 hours, making sure that for that January 6th meeting, that we did everything exactly the way it was supposed to be done. And yet you can't tell them a thing. But they're gonna still be around next cycle.
They're all voting for Winstead.
They are, absolutely they are. And he ensured that by his co-chair pick, I believe. But how do we go forward?
Well, the
What would you do as a
good
chair to try to
news
fix that?
is, I think first of all, I don't want to promise that I wanna cut anybody out of the party. We need to bring people into the party, not cut them out. That being said, disruptors, there are things that I witnessed at Frankenmuth that if I were chair, I would never have allowed. I would never allow a member of state committee, and so this isn't speaking against Pete, but it is a little bit. Pete did not even appoint a sergeant of arms at the beginning of that meeting. Going into a meeting where you're gonna have disruption. The minute I have a state committee member giving the finger to other state committee members, that person would have been out of the room. I would never allow that in a meeting. And another thing that I can tell you, that when I did run meetings in state committee, I learned from the best. I had Dave DeShaw at my side, who's a master at managing a room, and he was great with me. What he taught me is that the majority is gonna have the vote. You let the minority speak a little bit. You have a motion to end discussion. The vote will always pass to end discussion because you have the numbers, and you stop, it's done. You take the vote, you move on. I think that Pete, probably because of where he came in, was a little bit more oversensitive to trying to allow their voice to be heard. I don't have that baggage. We're gonna start, it's gonna be fresh. I think a lot of those people are gonna not be part of state committee moving forward. I think that they slowly get disenfranchised because they're not winning and they're leaving the party. And I just hope they're replaced by more reasonable people. I pray every day that I have a very functional, hardworking state committee member team that are people that have institutional knowledge about the party. People who've been around, been through this, where they know how to win and stop talking about the past. I mean, why we keep bringing up the past. And also the whole thing with the tabulators and the voting, all of those discussions, if you really break it down, are accusing each other. We're all Republicans in this room, and the whole idea is that we're accusing each other of cheating. You know, if we can't trust our own body of people that we've elected, you know, we elect district chairs, we elect county chairs, we elect state committee members. So these are supposed to be the leaders within our party. If the leaders within our party can't trust each other, you know, I think that's ridiculous, so.
It's all the way down to the county level. I mean, Berry County, we've all played well together, but it's still, that division is still there and still accusing us of cheating for the chair count and
Even those counts, you're getting
that whole
cheated.
KK thing just will never go away. It will just,
Well, thank you for
Meshawn was
not
a-
quitting.
Meshawn was accused of rigging the last poll that the only poll that meant anything was a poll that was done by Ionia County GOP at that debate, so we were both accused of rigging that because, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally senators running that, it was Jonathan Lindsay and Steve Carr, Representative Carra, ran an event, ran some type of a poll, electronic poll, and then one of my opponents accused us of somehow rigging, so really accusing Senator Lindsay and Representative Carra of cheating. So you're right, these conversations have to stop.
we just have so much more work to do. We don't have time for it.
The most important thing is not quitting, so people getting
Oh, no, I'm ready for
frustrated.
D2 now.
Yep.
I'm putting more into it now, cause I'm like, I'm done with this.
Yep.
From a human nature standpoint, we just need to catalog who the people are that are making those ridiculous accusations when they're obviously ridiculous, because people tend to accuse other people of what they would do. So we just need to,
Good point.
That's
we
a
just
great
need to
point.
catalog who they are and
Yep.
And not
use
only-
that knowledge.
And not only that, they're the ones that seem to always control the narrative. They come out first with a comment, they come out first and they keep running with this. And then I've
You
sent
just gotta
Tim
kibosh it with
several,
facts.
you know, hey, they're controlling the narrative. This last meeting that we had, them controlling the narrative, that Christina, it was all lies, you know,
It's
about
really
Christina.
like, we're really talking about like 20, 25 people in the
Right, and I
entire state.
texted Tim, I said, they're controlling the
Which is
narrative, this
crazy.
has to stop. Tim right away wrote a thing up about the truth of what went on in that meeting, and we start blasting that out. We've gotta be better at controlling
And
the
literally,
narrative.
in that meeting,
The
was only
truth.
3 people that were speaking out.
Yeah,
When we did the division counts, less than 25%.
right,
That's
Of the committee,
crazy.
but only 3 people were
They're
speaking.
good, passionate people, they're just, you know, that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, well,
I would think just be tweaked a little bit, you know, and
Right.
They've been programmed.
sometimes when you're so passionate, you just have to realize that.
Okay, so you have a
Oh.
good answer, giving people, if you wanna be a part of the party, if you're on state committee, you're super passionate, they need a job. They need a task, they need something to do that isn't just busy work, because I think a mistake a lot of our past chairs make is they take all of these people and they put them in a committee, and that committee isn't meant to do anything. I'm not gonna do that. I think our district chairs should pick which people should go in which committee. Yeah, I mean, I don't know your people, you know the people, and so I think I am 100% gonna depend on all 13 congressional district chairs to make the choices for where they think people will be best served. So if you have people like that, put them in a place where they can actually get something done and have real work to do. I don't want any fluff committees. I only want committees that are gonna work towards electing and winning in 26. He's been waiting.
I know he took it.
Yeah.
My big thing is numbers. Money for this year that we need to be ready for next year, what is the dollar amount? I heard one yesterday, I'm just sitting, I wasn't even.
I don't think people recognize totally how the money works, and this is another thing I have a good experience, because even people that are really involved in the party, I had a woman question me the other day, she's been involved a long time, she's like, how are you gonna raise 25 million for the party? The great news, I don't have to raise 25 million for the party. There is, outside organizations, depending on the cycle, that put pass-through money through the party. That's what just happened. Pete this last cycle raised 2.7 million.
What's passed through money?
So I'll explain that.
Okay.
What it means is your chairs in the last 3 cycles have not raised more than $3 million. Ron Weiser pretty much wrote the checks himself, because remember, I get accused a lot of the failures of that cycle. When he became chair, when I became co-chair, was literally 3 weeks after January 6th. The whole world was in chaos. The Republican Party across the country was in absolute chaos. Not only did we have an election stolen from us, but then we had a insurrection, we had people being arrested. Every donor had every excuse in the world to never donate or write checks to Republicans ever again, and they did it. They basically, every corporate dollar that had been giving money to Republicans completely pulled back, including in Michigan. So pass-through dollars are dollars that the NRCC, the RAGA, which is Republican Governors Association, the National Senate Republican Committee, the Congressional Campaign Committee, all of these committees have huge dollars,
Trump
tons of
campaign.
money,
Trump
and the Trump campaign. Those dollars they see candidates once our primaries are done, and they put a ton of money into the Michigan Republican Party, and it always has a goal. In other words, let's say we have a candidate, he just won our primary for the US Senate seat.
Tom Barrett.
They love him, and so they're gonna decide to give us $20 million to win. And they're gonna say, we want this 20 million to be spent on billboards, on radio ads, and on print. And they give that money to our party. They need to trust that we know what we're doing and that we've got a good team. The money goes into our account. Now it's our job to find the vendors for the TV ads, for the billboards, and for the print, and to spend that $20 million and to be able to give them an accounting of exactly how it's spent. So I do anticipate a lot of money a ton of money, because they're saying that this US Senate seat is gonna be the #1 seat from the Senate side. Focus is Michigan. And I've heard numbers, every cycle you hear numbers and they're bigger than before. I've heard like $500 million might be spent on this Senate race. That's how important it is to win.
That's
So
the number I was looking for.
that kind of money will come into our party. It will lift, every Republican, because if we have a candidate if I'm fighting for Joe Johnson and I've got 20 million to spend on him for US Senate race and positive Republican messaging, that's gonna help every other Republican candidate in Michigan too. But when it comes to what the party chair has to raise to keep the party running and to function with our staff and the building, you need anywhere from $2 to $5 million, and I'm not intimidated by that number at
Can I
all.
add just a little color to that?
Yeah.
So as a budget chair this last cycle, we raised $2.5 million plus, there were some other dues and different things, so we had around 3 million. Our budget was about $3 million, and, that was the budget that we approved. That was for our internal stuff.
Right.
But the total amount of money spent that went through the state party was $28 million. So $25 million came from the RNC and the Trump campaign and the NRCC and all those organizations. And then a big chunk of that was spent on mailing. The $20 million of it was spent on mailers, because as a nonprofit, we get a way lower postage rate than the candidates and the campaigns can get themselves. And then the candidates get a much lower TV buy rate than we can or any other organization. So a lot of the money, some of that, the other 5 million, big chunk, there was some texting and email campaigns too, but then another big chunk, and particularly right at the end, a bunch of money went to Matt Hall's PAC, who then went out to, because we're maxing out on all these donations. Money's flowing through and then it's going out from the party, some of it to these other groups who then can buy lower TV marketing than we can. And some people will say, well, all this money went out 3 days before the election, how's that gonna make a difference? Well, your TV marketing, you can contract for that and get the marketing out there before you pay for it all. So there's a lot of TV buys that were
Pre-buy.
paid for, pre-buy, yeah. Well, a lot of that was paid right at the campaign, the end of the campaign. And so there was money going to different PACs that were maxing out all these PACs so that they could get the cheapest rates for TV buys. We're doing all the cheapest rate for mailers. So yeah, Meshawn's right. I mean, there's a ton of money that goes through, and that number, that $2.5 to $3 million, is exactly what we budgeted just for the internal functioning of the party.
You would be an incredible asset to my campaign right now, because really one of my opponents he just did it again. He's talking about $20 million that came into the party and half of it went right into one man's pocket. He's saying it over and over again. And I said on this call, I said, listen, I am gonna make claims about my opponents, and nothing I say I can't back on paper. I am not gonna say anything that I cannot show you on paper, okay? Like Joe Sella is not a precinct delegate and he hasn't been for 20 years. That might not be a big deal to anybody, but at least I can show you on paper that fact. To make claims like $20 million coming into the party and half of it going into one man's
John
pocket
Young's
without any proof, without any, show me, because you know where the money went. And I can promise you that like Pete Hoekstra, my budget chair is gonna be the person responsible for maintaining and looking at bids and deciding where that money goes. I don't want that responsibility. Like President Trump, I like to surround myself with winners and people who know what they're doing. I don't claim to know everything. I want people that know what their skill set is, and I want them to do that.
Speaking of which, I'm very concerned that you don't have a vice chairperson yet. We're weeks away.
You are gonna love him.
But why can't you tell us? I
Is he
know
identified
there's a
as a
certain
him
way
or
you
is
would
it
never
Monday?
speak,
So,
but here you are, you cannot commit to vote for a chair without knowing who a vice chair.
Okay, well, I would like to address that. I wanted to be very, very careful in this decision. I didn't want to just pick somebody from the party, and I know that's traditionally what always is, you see it right now. I wanted to bring somebody that would bring something to the team. And the number one thing that I feel that I would love to have help with is somebody that can raise money outside of the regular way that we raise money. So I looked for somebody that has been involved in Republican politics a long time, but not party politics, so not a precinct delegate. I found a businessman that has worked with President Trump since 2016, so I've known him since 2016, sort of on the I knew him only during the campaigns, in the 2016, 2020, and this past time. He was part of building coalitions for President Trump. He's from Inkster originally. He's a businessman, self-made, grew up with was born with a mother when she was 17 years old, single mom, self-made, multimillionaire. I've watched him raise millions of dollars just for Donald Trump. The only reason you don't know who he is yet is I wanted him to meet with individuals that I trusted and within the Trump team, and I wanted them to question him and talk to him and make sure that they thought that this was a good fit. So it's taken a while because he's a businessman and it's been a lot of people. We were supposed to announce him on Wednesday. My mother collapsed in her office and had what we thought was a stroke. Thank God she's fine now, she's home. But the last 3 days have just been nonstop hospital and doctor and getting my mom home. And so then we were thinking of moving it to Friday, but he flew out to go to the Super Bowl. So we're moving it to Monday. You'll love him. He's a black man. He's 57 years old. He married his high school sweetheart. He's got 3 grown girls and nobody knows him. That might hurt me because nobody knows him. But he has promised to help raise a lot of money for the party. And he's funny. I think he'll be great up at the podium. I'd like him to help run some of the meetings.
With regards to the money, the nonpartisan portion this past time was pathetic. We did what we could in Berry County. We spent, I think, $12,000 was allocated towards flyers and stuff for the nonpartisan, the judges, the Board of Education, all the regents and stuff like this, right? We went to Lansing and picked up signs for Andrew Fink, so there were a lot of Fink signs, at least in Barry. O'Grady, we could not get anything from him, nothing. There was a couple ads with the left's representatives, nothing for the right? In Berry County, which is pretty stinking red, O'Grady and Fink lost, even all of our efforts, right? And now we're even at a more deficit at the Supreme Court. So one of the big things where money needs to go to is these nonpartisan races and supporting conservative candidates.
Especially the state Supreme Court.
Yeah.
And this question sort of goes back to the answer that Tim gave you. You're right, if the party were able to fundraise more specifically just for, if there were a separate bucket that was just about nonpartisan races, but I am sure that within the budget committee, they had money that came in, it had to be spent, but it's all designated. You don't have, unfortunately, we don't have these external organizations,
Like Soros.
like George Soros,
Well,
that they
we
only
have
care
Elon
about
now.
judicial. Yeah, we do, and that is something else I'm very proud of.
Petition Elon to help in Michigan.
Well,
What about
I-
my Beck, are you?
I have the support of Charlie Kirk. He endorsed me right off the bat and Turning Point. I've got a great relationship with both of those entities. Exactly. I have a great relationship with the Elon Musk PAC because I helped the person that was sent to Michigan and his entire job was to find people to go out and knock doors. They had $20 million to spend in Michigan. I don't know if any of you know any of those people that worked on that, but I have a great relationship with that. And then in addition to that, I have a wonderful relationship in the endorsement of Scott Pressler. Scott's been to Michigan only a couple of times. He completely changed things in Pennsylvania. Now he's in Nevada, but he has committed to me that he will be in Michigan at least 6 times over the next 2 years. I'd like to utilize that for really, instead of him just doing what he does in Michigan, we need to duplicate Scott Pressler. So what I want him to do is come in and do an all-day intensive training where people who are really passionate about what he does come and participate. So I plan on training being a really big part of this administration. I've already got a plan set by JD Glazer. I don't know if any of you guys know who he is.
Yeah, I'll know
JD has worked on a training program, not just for Robert's Rules of Order, but of a lot of things that we need to train our delegates on. You know, delegates come in and they're so confused, they don't even know why they're going to a county convention. So I think that needs to change. JD, working with your grassroots vice chair, Marion Sheridan, are gonna launch a training program, but more importantly, they're gonna fund it independently. So they're not coming to me like traditional vice chairs need to do and say, hey, I need a budget for this. They are fundraising on their own to raise money for this training program that will be implemented by the party.
Awesome.
Yep.
So I'm just gonna go back to the Christina thing one last time.
That's okay.
So the thing is like, I'm so glad that you said it was painful, because it's painful for me. Because, I mean, she came, she spoke, she was passionate. I have a word for her.
Easy to love.
Easy to love, easy to believe.
We all
And,
believed in her on the
Great,
front.
great speaker.
Great speaker. So I don't know if it was malintent or if it was disorganization and not enough knowledge base.
No, honey.
No, but, so it doesn't matter, but I think it would be helpful, like these training things that you're just saying, yay, that was one of my things I was gonna say, we need training.
Yeah.
I'm this is my 3rd round as a precinct delegate, we need training.
So I apologize right there. If this is your 3rd time, that means you've witnessed nothing but hell.
It's all right, it's all right, it's all right.
The people that have just came in with that, it's like, oh.
I'm proud to be here, I'm
Yeah,
really proud to
I'm
be here.
glad
Matter
to
of fact,
have you.
you were up and you were one of the first people that spoke at state convention when that happened.
And
But-
it,
About Runstead, so you need to twist this back on these people are supporting him, because almost every single Republican understands that the election was stolen and that January 6th was not an insurrection. I was there, I can testify to it, I was there alone as a female, I was alone and I felt safe.
yeah, it was all families and kids pushing
Yes,
strollers.
families and kids,
Yeah.
and I have pictures of Chinese holding long banners of Republicans, fight the CCP, I have so much stuff. Turn that back on him and say, why would you support this man, or turn it back on them, why would you support this man that doesn't believe that there was election fraud, when there clearly was, and it's gonna be exposed maybe tomorrow, who knows what Tony's gonna do.
Nobody asks him that. I said to somebody, will somebody please ask Joe Sella, does he believe the election was stolen?
Exactly.
Nobody,
Those
you know,
are
they
the-
ask all these other questions, the same
That should
questions.
be our first question to every single candidate. Do you believe the
Right.
election was
And
stolen?
we were their answers.
That just, boom, that clarifies everything.
Well,
You believe
first, back to your first point about Christina, nobody knows the answer. We knew Christina very well from back when she was a 14th Congressional District member in her early 30s coming to the meetings. This is 15 years ago. I helped her get the Trump endorsement, so total guilty there.
It's all your fault.
You know, she was passionate, an orator, black woman, intelligent. To me, it was like, this is an incredible candidate for Secretary of State. I don't know what happened. We know the people that sort of got into her brain, because we sort of dealt with one or two of them, and, you know, I don't know if any of you guys know who Mike Labadie is. We also went way
Many
back.
of us have learned.
We watched him come in. You know, I don't wanna talk too much about it, but the real answer is nobody knows. I don't know if there was a plan all along to come in, infiltrate the Michigan Republican Party and do this destruction. I tend to believe that Christina was not part of that maybe she was taken over by these people. I'd like to think that because I've known her for so long, I have a hard time believing that this young woman who came in, who seemed so passionate about Republican cause, way back then was fooling all of us, years before
She was
she became a
manipulated
candidate.
and used for
Yes.
their purposes.
Yep. And I think she probably still is. I think those people, if any of you have seen any of the attacks on my husband and I, it's the same organization. It's, I mean, they're saying, it's somebody outside of Michigan,
It's Laura
because
Carpenter.
one of the ways they're attacking me is they're attacking me for being an indicted elector, which I have the support of almost every Republican.
That's a
on
badge
that.
of honor.
Yeah, exactly, so it's like, they're using things against us that the delegates like, so I don't, it's like, you
Yeah.
can tell they don't even know what they're doing, so.
It's like threaten me with a good time.
Exactly.
Um,
Did I answer all your questions?
I think so, and I was tying a lot of things together, but I just wanna say, that's gotta be our first question,
Well,
you
I'm-
know?
yeah.
And those people, like, how can you support Christina, but then support Jim Rudstead when he's saying
The
that there
exact
is
same
no
things. He
election?
wants to burn the party down and start all over. That's basically his message, which we've heard that message before. It
yeah,
does
we
not
have.
work.
Well,
We just won everything. Now is not the time to burn anything
Well,
down.
and then when he say something about, well, he could do both things, cause he just basically has to go in one day and push a button, or something like that. Like,
That's
what?
embarrassing. And I can tell you, every legislator in Lansing is, they are all in,
That's
they're
a
all
real
embarrassed.
argument for part-time
It
legislature.
is,
Yeah.
it is a walking billboard for a part-time legislature.
Okay,
Okay, first here.
I wanna, first thank you for the air quotes on insurrection.
Yes.
And I have two questions. The first one being, what is your plan? Cause I know I've watched 3 of your interviews on the Berrien Forum, and I know you're thinking ahead on these things. What is your plan for bringing that Trump energy to the midterm election? Because we really absolutely need to win top to bottom on the ballot.
I mean, Trump is the best at bringing the energy, and I'm hoping that now that he's the president and not just the candidate, that we're gonna have a lot more of that passion. I think what we're all watching every single morning when we wake up, every single day is like Christmas morning. So that's sort of like, that energy about what he's accomplished, how can, you know, for all those Republicans out there in the world that just show up to vote on election day and they don't really pay attention to anything else, I can't help but think that Trump coming to Michigan and saying, I need you, and the only way you're gonna take this over is to win. There isn't anything better than that.
Can we get him here a couple
We
times?
will absolutely get President Trump here. I guarantee we'll have J.D. Vance, who right now, I mean, I think.
Not a
Saw
soul
him in
stirrer.
person
Yeah.
too.
I
It was
want
great.
Mackinac Conference to be off the hook. I want it to be something a little bit different. We've gone to Mackinac forever. And one of the things that I will do as chair is I want to support outside organizations that have always been ignored by the party, that do their own thing. I think the party's always seen them as competition, and I don't wanna do that. Being somebody that was an outside organization that wished that the party would amplify what we were doing, we brought in Charlie Kirk, we brought in Candace Owens, we had Dinesh D'Souza. We would bring in all these great people for these big events, and I would beg party leadership, would you share our event so we can help sell tickets? We did Battle Cry, statewide, conventions, and we begged the party to be involved. Send some, I asked the chair to come speak at Battle Cry. That was when it was Rana, Laura Cox, they just weren't interested, and I think it's because they've always seen it as competition. I feel like we need to be a ship, and then we need all the little ships
Bring all those
all
teams
together, just like the Democrats do. So for Mackinac, I obviously wanna sell tickets and have big speakers up at the top of the hill, but I also want to focus on everything going down in the town, all of those great parties that outside organizations and candidates throw, magnify that. Somebody last night, I was on a phone call with the UP, they want us to magnify and have Republicans take over St. Ignace and Mackinac City. I think that would be incredible. Like, let's fill all the campgrounds and all the little motels, and let's make all Republicans, no matter how much of it they can enjoy, come up to as close to Mackinac as they can.
So more than 700 registrations?
More than 700, well, maybe it's only 1,000 registrations, but 3,000 people.
Yeah.
Filling the area and having parties and having meetings and bringing in guest speakers and Trump
We
energy.
used to have 2,000
So-
when we first started going.
Yeah, when we first started going to the conference, it was 2,000 attendees. I would love to hit that mark.
What is
And-
the date of that?
It's,
Usually
September,
third week in September.
and I wanna say I don't have it exact, I don't even have it on my calendar, I wanna say 21st. You know what, it's one of the very first things we should get onto the calendar, to start setting it aside. And leaders to start planning their own group of people to go up, whether or not they make it onto the island or take over St. Ignace or Mackinac City.
Question I have is, I asked him and he said he didn't think so. Did they ever finish, did Do we know if they ever finished paying for the Mackinac conference?
Yes,
I think so.
Cause I know
Yeah.
that,
that was in the report.
Yeah,
Yep.
finally,
Somehow.
yeah.
Left enough to run the next two, is the next convention?
Yeah, and there isn't debt, there's gonna be some debt, but there's also enough money that will be left by Hoekstra to run the next two conventions,
Yeah, there should be a little over $100,000
which is
cash left
fabulous.
in the bank, and the Comerica debt should be around 300,000, so, but we're paying down 10,000 a month, yeah, 10,000 a month, so, I mean, we'll be in good shape, you know,
I
as
hope
you know,
I
that
hope
debt
you're
always
running to
carries
be on
over, you
state
know.
committee again.
I am, yeah.
Okay, good. That institutional knowledge is what we're gonna need.
Okay, my other question, Meshawn, and I asked this of Runstedt yesterday, and I asked it to him about creating a state committee. You've already kind of spoken to, you don't think that's the appropriate method for managing this. But when it comes to holding state representatives and senators accountable, we proposed, first time you don't vote with the convention, with the Constitution, we called them out directly to them on it, that we're watching them and we're keeping track. And the second time we publish that they're not doing it, and the third time we censure them. Now
I love that.
you've stated that you don't think,
I
that's
can't
the
do
role of
it,
the
I'm not
MRP.
saying you can't do it,
But,
I love
right,
it.
the counties obviously can. Michigan Conservative Coalition is the organization you started. Would that organization, or can you identify another organization that would be a good focus for that energy to get that published element
You
going on?
should
so it's
contact, I
statewide?
can put you in touch with the current president of the Michigan Conservative Coalition. They already sort of do that, but they would love somebody to spearhead that, I know that. Rescue Michigan already is doing that, that's Adam D'Angeli. I am sure, I mean, the Grand New Party PAC is literally throwing spears into, Republicans that vote wrong. So there are a lot of great organizations that are doing that already. And I do encourage our district chairs, to censure and hold their candidates accountable.
There was like 8 or 10
Might there be
censures.
a role within the party
Within the
to,
state
like,
party.
coordinate Rescue Michigan and the other two entities that you just named that have popped right back out of my brain, to coordinate them so that when Adam is putting out a video, that GNP hits Telegram and Twitter and everything at the same time, and the other organization, they all do it at the same time, or in some
That
sort of
actually
coordinated
sounds like,
effort.
that actually sounds like a great job for one of the vice chairs to spearhead.
Kind of what I was thinking.
So, you know, you've got vice chairs, they have titles, but none of them really have jobs and they don't quite know what to do, and I know that because I've been friends with a few of them. I want every one of them, I'm sure I don't know if you've seen it in my plan.
Might be a good coalition.
The very first thing I wanna do is bring in the vice chairs, I wanna rename ethnic vice chair, that's my recommendation, I think that's like barbaric.
Yeah.
And maybe rename some of the others if they want a new name, they're gonna be the current of, you know, of that title. But I want them all to have a job, I want them all to pick a lane, and it doesn't really matter what their title is, pick a lane. If the coalition's vice chair tells me that all they wanna do is fight for school board members,
Feel really good.
you know, at 3, then just do a great job, let's fundraise for it and just do that. Maybe it's this nonpartisan, wouldn't that be a great job for one of our vice chairs to just focus on fundraising for the nonpartisan races that we have? I don't want any of them this next cycle to leave where we can look back and say, what did that person do? Cause I can tell you, cycle after cycle.
They wouldn't be running for
They
those
don't do
positions if they
anything.
didn't
We
wanna
said
do
on the way
something.
here, what do the vice chairs even do?
No,
We have
Miguel,
to-
I have to tell you, I got in trouble, so when I was the co-chair, and I was the outgoing co-chair,
Yeah.
I got in trouble because I spoke out publicly at an event, and this is where I get in trouble, cause I say things. I said that our youth chair, you know, nice kid, he's been the youth chair for 3 cycles, has never done anything but organize free beer and free motels at the Mackinac Conference. That is it. That's the only thing that vice chair did. And he was a nice kid, and I didn't want to be mean about it, but I feel as a party we should expect more. And that is truly, you know, I've worked with this person cycle after cycle. I don't think we should accept it anymore.
There
I
was
think
20 years of people running for this office just to get the title, and that did
Right.
nothing.
That's why we want Miguel.
That's why we
Yes.
want Miguel.
Yeah,
He's
well, I
an
don't wanna
energizing
lose
button.
any, I was really excited to see that 4 stepped up. I prefer 2 of them because I worked with them. And so a track record, when you work with somebody then you already know that they work, you know what I mean? Two of them I haven't worked with at all, they seem like nice young guys. I also propose that we don't lose any of the vice chairs, so if Miguel wins vice chair, he will be vice chair, but I'm gonna ask the other three to be associate vice chairs. They don't get a vote on state committee, but they will have a title, and they will serve under the coalitions, the admin, and the grassroots, sort of like a bench.
Too big
An
of a state to
assistant.
not have more.
Exactly,
Mhm.
we need all of them.
Gary's had his hand up for quite a while.
I have a question. I actually had a stop the steal sign on my business in downtown Nashville on M66. I think I'm a person I like to look forward. If we keep on going back to 2020 and wanting to say, why are you for or against the, we know it was stolen, okay, but we gotta focus on forward, I believe. I'm not worried about, what is your opinion on that, because we got our president in place. Let's look forward to our next election. The election integrity is gonna be important. Had a lot of people out there, so that was extremely important. JD, he did a lot of Robert's Rules training. He left some things short, like you can't be an audience member trying to do Robert's Rules on executive committees and things like that.
Yeah, that is important.
Well, it is, but as I said, so he left some training short, but you can't do Robert's Rules, you know, so it's caused grief at our county level. I asked earlier.
Yeah, it's like knowledge is power, but sometimes, if you don't have all of
Half
it.
knowledge is
So it
disastrous.
caused some grief, so I
Yeah.
said, that's something he should have put it, I was village president, as I said, meetings get out of order when people try to use something that they don't know what they're using, and we have a few of those in our county. I asked earlier, we need to not have 14,000 Republican candidates for a primary in August. It's not the Republicans' party to sort them out. I understand and realize that, but it is the candidate's responsibility to really sit down and sort each other out. And not wait till the last minute after they beat the crap out of each other. So, we really need to.
Mike, is
Well,
that
and
why
then-
Greenlee dropped out? Is that kinda what you're saying, is them look at
Yeah, look at each
themselves?
other, and who should we really be putting out there?
Yeah,
This is how we lose races.
So just in that one, but then let's talk about the governor's race. Brad, I'm glad you brought up Scott. No malfeasance, no backroom deals, no money. We don't have the money to pay somebody like Greenlee off anyway.
That's not what I read, I
yeah.
really got money.
And no promise
I'd
of
rather you
any-
just paid your house off,
Yeah.
you.
I did, thank you, that was, took us 20 years. No, Scott's a great guy, and he did have some conversations with people, that are more important than Scott and I, that said to him that, the president's team trusts Meshawn, and they know me, and that they think that he'd be better served helping on the outside, and I think that was a very noble thing for Scott to do. He just made this decision. He wants to keep consulting. He will be an absolute asset to me. We've known each other a long time. I actually plan on bringing him in specifically for Mackinac, because it's gonna be a huge job, and I'm not gonna try to do these things myself. I think Scott will do a great job making Mackinac amazing, so.
Well, I think you suggested it at the very end.
You're right, I did. Maybe that was what made him think it. I'm like, he's got all these clients, what are they gonna do?
Quick question, and one of your opponents, it's the first time many of us heard this, that there's actually a vacant Senate seat in Michigan.
Yeah.
And for one, it was troubling, it's the first time we heard this, right? I don't know why it's not being screamed at the rooftops, because it's very important, right? And obviously, it's up to the governor to do this.
Not
But-
going to.
Huh?
Not going to.
Well, but it has to be on the ballot in November, right? Is that correct?
Yes, it has to be
It has
by
to be
November.
by November.
Yes,
If it isn't till then, I mean, that's what we gotta do, but we've gotta get somebody that wins that seat.
Yes.
And a 1919 is a hell of a lot better than a 2118 or 17 or whatever.
there is already a candidate, a great candidate with huge name recognition that is planning on running for that seat, so that part I know. We need the governor to announce a special election. I know that you probably haven't heard it here, but I can tell you within inter-party things, there's a lot of demands, Senator Nesbitt has been very vocal about this, Matt Hall has been very vocal in messaging to the governor demanding that she call the special election.
People should
Why
know,
haven't the
though.
people known? That's the, I
I
guess
think
that's.
the people within that district are, there are some leaders within that district that are, but you're right.
Well, and so here's, when we had the two
Thirty-five, but I don't know
special,
what area it is.
It's Saginaw, Midland.
That's right.
But here's the biggest thing is, we had those 2 special house, seats
Yep.
this past year, whatever, right? And we actually supported Josh, the county, we threw money out that way, right?
You're right, the whole state got involved in
Right,
that special
but
election.
what was really frustrating, and there was like an 8% and 11% turnout from the Republican Party on those nominees, right? So getting this out to us right now, and making people aware of that, I think is huge, right?
Boots on the ground, definitely.
I mean, to
I
get
like
behind it.
to do this analogy, I'm gonna do it, cause it's worked. How many of you guys know Garrett Soldano?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so back in that era, I was co-chair and I had meetings with all these candidates that wanted to run for governor, and I would sit down and I was brutally honest with a couple of them. Because I just didn't want them to, it's not that I didn't want them to waste their time, I wanted them to choose something that I thought they could win. And so Ryan Kelly and Garrett Soldano are 2 of these people that I spent a lot of time with and a lot of meetings with. Later, after the whole thing was over, Garrett Soldano came up to me and he said, I cannot believe the things you said to me. He said, everything that you told me, and all of it pissed me off over and over, and every single thing you said to me came true. And he said, so I want you to know that I recognize now what you tried to share with me. And a lot of times you have to go through things before you really, you know what I mean? People can tell you something, but until you experience it
Right.
and learn from it. But one of the analogies that I gave Garrett Soldano and I told him to do was, I said, if this entire red phone is every Republican voter that's gonna show up to vote in the primary, they just do it. They're good Republicans, you know, they're taking their kids to basketball games, they're involved in their church, they're involved in their business, they're Republicans, they're gonna show up and vote on primary election day. But only the amount of people in one of these circles is the entire state Republicans that are doing what you're doing right now. You are sitting here on a Saturday because you care about Michigan Republicans working. You pay attention to social media about Republicans. You might look on Facebook or Twitter caring about who's running. So when you talk about that seat, people do not care. That doesn't mean they're not Republicans and that they're not gonna show up to vote, but they don't know, and they don't know who the candidates are. And the only way that everybody else finds out who the candidates are is if a ton of money or a ton of name recognition is pounded into the entire state of Michigan. I told Garrett Soldano, who thought he was the king of the world because he could get 10,000 likes every time he posted a video, and he'd throw events and he'd get hundreds of people that would show up, but I pointed out those are the same hundreds of people over and over and over. I said, you probably have 1,000 people across the state that love you and will drive an hour to go hear you and see you, but they're gonna do that over and over and over. I said, go to Costco, 200 miles from here, and walk into Costco and walk through the Costco and say to people, do you know who I am? and he laughed, and then I said, walk into a big boy restaurant.
We do this.
You know, 100, Matt and I do this to prove things. I will walk up to a table of men having coffee at a Coney, because we travel all over the state. We have a cabin up in Hillman we spend a ton of time at, and we have a boat in Grand Haven and Grand Kids, so we're always traveling the state. I love walking, you guys should do this, walk into a diner, you always see a group of 15 men having coffee, right?
Ask me.
And just walk up to them and just say, who are you, you can't do this right now, but you have to do this in a few months after we've got all these candidates in. Who are you supporting for governor? Who are you supporting for, and first of all, you'll have a bunch of like, oh, I'm not into politics, you might get a Democrat table, but assuming you get a bunch of guys and they're wearing military
They're
hats, you're gonna
usually,
assume.
they're
Right.
They've got their
They
Trump
can't
caps on.
tell you,
gotta
they'll
go.
be like, oh, there's some guy named, this was literally right before the primary, Matt and I did this a whole bunch, just to prove a point. There's some guy, one of them will know a Ryan Kelly, one of them sort of knew Soldano, but they don't really know his name. A couple of them definitely know Tudor Dixon. And that's it, like people don't know. They walk into that polling booth and they pick the name of the person that they recognize the most.
Oh, yeah.
And that maybe had a favorable, and so, you know, if Rinke runs, and if he really spends $15 million, and he pounds the name Rinke into the state of Michigan, because, I mean, how many of you guys know Kevin Rinke? You know, yeah, you know, if he pounds his name into the state of Michigan, if John James runs, he automatically has a huge boost in name recognition. His name actually, actually polls higher than any other candidate in Michigan, so
That's
now.
worth $10 million.
Right, so now Rinky, if he wants to run against him, has to spend double the amount of money that James does just to get his name recognition up just as high. But back to that question, I wish we didn't have 7 candidates running. You try to tell 7 egos that they're not the guy.
Why does John James have such a name recognition?
Because he's run so many
He's
times.
run
For
some,
different things.
and
So
statewide races.
That's the only reason.
Yep, so millions of dollars
So
of
Jocelyn
name
Benson won, she
recognition.
moved in from Pennsylvania, won once and ran once and lost, and ran another time and won.
Okay.
She didn't win the sack first.
Well, yeah.
As you were talking about, like the youth chair, those, that if you don't get elected, you still need to work together. So Berry County had this huge forum for the chairs last time. They all showed up, 400 people came, and they all committed to work together if they didn't win.
And they disappear.
Didn't see anybody.
Matt and I have watched that. I mean, we've lost many things being involved in politics. We don't ever quit.
Oh, we've lost a lot of
Yeah,
friends.
we
So-
regroup, I mean, if I don't win chair, I'm gonna be working really hard
Well,
I will be working really hard for somebody running for governor or US Senate.
so yesterday it was asked, I think you might have asked.
I did, yeah.
Of Joe, if you don't win,
Jim,
I'm sorry, Jim, you can tell he's not on my list. Who would you support? And we all kind of went, ooh, that's a scary question.
That is a good question. I'm pretty
Well,
sure I know the answer.
He said that he would not support anyone, he would not, so we're at convention, he
Wow.
doesn't win the first one, he's gotta drop out, who would?
No, they're both gonna endorse each other, not to her.
No, I think her point might be right. That's good intel. I appreciate that.
When-
I think Sella, is the one that I don't know what he's gonna do. I was pretty positive that Runstead would support.
Well, I'm gonna ask him that question next weekend.
That's
He said
good.
that he
Yeah.
would not
Yeah.
put his support behind either.
behind any, he's
Well,
gonna
yeah,
leave it up to the people.
Jim said he wouldn't endorse either one of you if he lost first round.
Interesting.
So
Um,
the,
And I
So-
wish then I had come back and asked him, if you lose, are you gonna invest any energy in helping the 2026 campaigners win? And
know
we ran
you
out of
will.
time, I didn't
We
get
know
to
you
ask
will,
him.
but say you lost the first round, would you actually, I'm not asking who, but would you,
I think I can tell you who I would
Would-
support. I'm not afraid of saying it at all. If I lost the first round, I would probably support never Trumper, anti-J6er Joe Sella, which is very hard for me to say. But I can tell you that
At least
mostly
he's not
because
an
I think
acting senator.
Jim wants to destroy our party. I don't think he has any idea how the party works. Joe Sella at least will have a bunch of staffers, because I know who's running his campaign. There are people who've been around Lansing for 20 years. The Mike Shirkey consultants are running Joe Sella's campaign right now. John Engler was making phone calls for Joe Sella yesterday. So Joe Sella at least will have an organization. I don't like the organization, and they're a bunch of rhinos, but he will have an organization to run the party. Jim Runstead is gonna be just a crapshoot. Yeah,
JK.
yeah, exactly.
the other quickie was, oh God.
No,
So Christie asked a question yesterday about, would you consider an election integrity committee, in the MRP, and, that and another.
That actually functioned as an election integrity committee, as opposed
Yeah.
to the one I sat on for 3 meetings that did nothing.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
so
So
you were
he
on the
said-
EI committee,
Once
state
I
committee?
was elected, like 7 months, with 7 months to go,
And
and
that's
they
exactly
did nothing.
why,
No,
yeah, and that's exactly why I'm running, because I am the county election integrity, the one that all clerks
Suits
hate.
against differently.
got it.
But anyway, he said I would have to look into that, and I said.
That's what he answered everything.
Yeah, he said to the
Because he
budget
doesn't
committee.
even know,
would
he
the
couldn't
budget-
even name the committees. I asked some important questions for people who are party people. I asked Joe Sella, we had a question of us asked about the, credentials committee. It was a credentials vote that happened to the first district that they were really upset about. And that was our question, is how would we have handled it, or would we have weighed in? And I answered the question, or Runstead answered the question, Joe answered the question, just talked about other weird stuff. It's what he does all the time, he doesn't answer the questions. And then I turned to him when it was my turn, luckily I was third, and I said, can you tell me who sits on the credentials committee? Can you just tell me what positions sit on the credentials committee? and he just stared at me, and then he got really red and he goes, it's their job to ask me questions, not yours. And I said, so you don't know the answer, right? And everybody was just silent, and then I said it again, I said, can you tell me? Name what makes up our credentials committee. He has no idea.
But with those committees,
I even
Tim
know
asked a
that.
question, and
Yes.
I'm curious, what would be your answer?
About
For
EI.
the- No, for once it's not EI, for the finance committee, so they've got all these members on there, would you appoint the chair, or would you allow them to vote their chair?
For the committees,
For the finance committee?
I will allow the congressional district chairs completely to figure out who from their district should go onto the committees. But myself and probably 5 other people, my co-chair, my finance chair, my secretary, we will sit together and figure out who should be the chairman of the committees. Yeah.
I have 2 points. First of all, back to, we're talking about like when, we have representatives who are not voting the way we want them to vote. I feel like we're not doing a great job of using social media. And so I feel like, and I don't know how we would do this, but I feel like we have to have like, we have like this county level communication where right now, just people who are going to state convention, we've got a thread going. Clearly, we don't want to have something like that, a texting thread with everybody that's a precinct delegate statewide. But I feel like, is there a way we can use social media and like have, like maybe, what is it, Facebook groups, which would have to be redone every election cycle, which would be not fun, but to have just people who are actually precinct delegates, when somebody votes the way they shouldn't be voting, that's put out there for the precinct delegates, and then we know, we go to those social media sites, like
Like
right
our
now.
telegram groups for the county and for
Yes,
district two.
yes, something like
This
that.
is sort
Yeah.
of
We
going
have a
back to
district 2
what,
group and a county group.
right, this is sort of going back to your question, because this would be a perfect role for one of the vice chairs to take on.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't even think
Yeah.
that we need to recreate a Facebook page, they exist already.
Do they?
Yes, well,
We just need to make better use
go
of it.
back to, and I'm only using these 3 because they're in my head right now, well, another one, so there's Michigan Conservative Coalition, there's Rescue Michigan, there's the Grand U Party PAC, there's also Brighter Michigan, Eric Castiglia's group, there's a lot, okay, those are just the 4 that I'm thinking of. All of those people already have social media presence, they're very big, they pound our Republicans, they have Twitter accounts. If we had a coordinator from the party, which I think should be one of our vice chairs, it would be a really easy thing to coordinate, where they have a text group with these group, and they say, we want you right now to point out that Representative Black just voted
Yes.
for,
Use the
2A,
power of social media.
voted with the Democrats
Yes.
on this.
And
That would be a great
promote
idea.
that. Okay, my second point is, and you're gonna have to hang with me, and kind of gonna refer to you at the end of it. All right, I am not calling you out, I am just sharing with you something from my experience. I monitored the 2016 recount. At that point, I was a never Trump Republican. Trump earned my vote, 1, because I paid attention to his kids, and his kids are normal, functioning adults. 2, he did everything I would have ever wanted a president to do. He earned my vote as a never Trump conservative. So I didn't vote for Trump in the 2016 election. When it came an opportunity to go monitor this recount, I went there, and I was able to go to table to table to table, different tables, I could see who was voting and how they were voting. Hillary Clinton didn't win any. But anyways, so in that process, I discovered that when an election occurs, there's 2 ways a precinct cannot be recounted. 1 is if the seal on the bag appears to be tampered or is broken. The other is if the number of ballots in the ballot bag do not equate to the number of ballots that are written in the ballot book. And so the crazy part about the number of ballots in the ballot bag, you have to be so careful when you're counting here, because you get 3 tries. So first try, you get your number. Second try, if it doesn't match, you get 1 more time to count them. And then if it doesn't equate, that ballot bag cannot be recounted.
70%.
Which is exactly the
Exactly,
bass
exactly,
backwards
exactly.
law.
So, 1, I believe that this was one of the original ways that they were committing election fraud. You
No.
took a couple ballots out, you put a couple ballots in. But then Ken often refers to a specific county in 2016. And that's
County, my favorite county.
That's a state election.
So I wanna say, election fraud is not in the past, and until Trump exposes it, well, you said that's, you have to look forward.
He
We
said
can't
stop
look at
talking
2020.
about 2020 is what he said.
We're talking about election fraud that is still gonna occur until Trump exposes it, which he is gonna do.
The only reason we won is too big to rig. We all
Right.
know it,
Right,
thank God for it,
but we have to
And
end
even
it.
then, they could have, I think they still could have manipulated the numbers, but the public narrative was so strong.
People are so
They
aware.
knew there'd be civil
and
war.
they knew
if
a
they
million
didn't let
eyes,
Trump win.
a million more eyes
So
are
they
watching.
just devoted all the finagling to the down ballots, which
Yes,
is why
I agree.
rates had to be counted for 3
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
What if I was a
150 more ballots
strategic
over here.
Democrat and all my fraud was more on how people got their ballots at their home, and that's where they all
Absolutely,
get,
that's part
so
of
they're
it.
all legit
It's not
ballots,
all
so
of
if
it,
you
but
would
that's a
look really
part of it.
close, and you'd force that bag to look, and then suddenly find out, you'd be like, we finally got it all, and you look it through and everything would line up, because trust me, sending in the ballot and doing those numbers are gonna line up to the T, because they're not people going through a thing, and then they're gonna be like, oh,
There's
you
no
finally
fraud.
got your recount, and they'll be like, oh, and there's none.
There's no fraud.
But
Because the
there's
because the
also
fraud was
ballots that were
way-
never folded too, which is
So I'm
an
just,
impossibility.
be very careful
Well, and
on
there's
how much you
also the
push into the
actual
look at
proof.
it, because a lot of the fraud might have been,
There's
No,
actual
you're right.
proof
It's
that
the-
the
it's getting the
state
ballot
level
into the home.
PDF
It's the
keeps
absentee
changing
ballots
every
coming
month,
in.
and
so.
that's, people are always talking
So
about the
anyways,
tabulation
it's
and all that, so be
long-term,
careful,
it's
because if you
pervasive,
force that,
and we
and you
can't
finally
stop
get into the
admitting
bag, those
that it's
numbers may line up better than they've ever done before.
President Trump is about to expose a ton.
I think
He's
so,
literally
too.
stated that he is going to have part of the Justice Department doing nothing but looking at election integrity, including what happened in 2020. He has said that. So I know that hasn't started yet, but I'm completely
I
depending
think
on
it's
him.
actually started and they've already got all the data, they're just waiting to deploy the narrative to.
Well, we get so excited about
I mean, there's so
possibly
many
like
of
the
us who
tabulators,
know.
but I have a feeling a lot of fraud is getting who got those,
Okay.
the actual ballots.
We know so
And-
much, but
and
no one to listen.
There's
That's gonna
lots
be
of
where the
avenues
issue
that we're
is, and that's
using.
not even what the focus is on, we
Well,
gotta make sure we're not.
What's your first name?
John,
John has the floor.
Sorry.
do you know Keith Marks?
It's not just
No.
2020, it's.
He is Hunter Nation, owns the Pursuit Channel, one of his very best friends is the Attorney General of Kansas.
I'm sorry, I can't hear John.
So, Shelley and I were on the phone with him and his data guy for about an hour at one point, right? This is regards to hunters, much like Turning Point is with the Christians and this and that. We know in Michigan, there's 504,000, based on data, Republican conservative hunters. There are 150,000 of those hunters that are not registered to vote, which is sad, right? And according to Keith, most hunters are to themselves. They go out in the woods, they go do this and that. They were very instrumental in getting the governor down in Louisiana across the finish line. There was 3 of them, right? Hunt the vote, right? Part of hunting. So he took his team down there and they got the 50+1 and they got that governor elected. They had a representative in Wisconsin and they had one in Pennsylvania and they were looking for one in Michigan. And I don't have that big money type thing, so.
They asked us to look for
We looked
someone.
and I talked to Angela and gave the contact information to Angela because somebody in your world would have more of that, and I don't know what it is in the house if there's that group. However, what I'm saying is, there was, I don't know if it was I forget what district it was, that we lost a vote not this last time, the time before. There are 13,000 registered, hunters in that district, and only 2,400 showed up, and we lost the district by like 1,200 votes, right? So, one of the committees at the state.
So how do we educate the hunters that
Well,
they could
that
actually
we're
flip the
trying, we
ballot?
go to as many banquets and this and that, and we have flyers with the
But it should be
statistic that
what
we put
Christie
out.
is saying, get it.
But at a state level, we need to do that, or contact Keith Marks, right? And I've got his,
I actually now think I have talked with Keith Marks, so I am friends with Shemaine Nugent. And towards
well,
the
they're very
end,
good, they're very close.
yep, so towards the end of this campaign, there was just so much going on, so many surrogates coming in. Shemaine was desperately trying to organize a really big event at a casino here in Michigan
Yep.
with Hunt the Vote and with Hunter Nation. I remember this now, I was on a conference call
Yes.
once. There just weren't enough resources, and they ended up not doing it in Michigan, they did it in some other state instead.
Wisconsin and
They
Pennsylvania.
said
Yes.
they didn't have the money
Yep.
yet for us.
So I completely agree, it's not just the Hunter, I've heard this
Catholic
Hunter
Church.
number, it's the church.
Well, the
It's a
church,
church.
that's
I
where
mean-
Turning Point took that, but the
Yep.
Hunter side, I mean, it's actually two different groups of people that we need to target. Most hunters, I believe, are strong Christians, we pray over, our, you know, what we harvest, right? But they're independents, they just leave me alone, right?
And they don't understand, they are not gonna be left alone.
Well, when these gun laws went in, and that's when they start waking up and going, holy
Right.
cow, right? But I think at the state level, you know, maybe there's something that.
Again, this would be a great, you're taking notes of all of this, Damon, right?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Videotaping. This would be a great, when we try to talk about something for our vice chairs to take on, I mean, a coalition's vice chair could say, I'm gonna take on 2, voting blocks, I'm gonna take on the Catholic Church, or I'm gonna take on the Evangelical Church, or I'm gonna take on the Hunters.
150,000 votes is huge.
Listen to this one, we were doing an event, it got canceled at the very end because of some kind of liability, but Scott Pressler was doing Truck Joe Biden events. And he gave us numbers that blew our mind about truckers, because truckers don't vote, and the reason they don't vote, it's like 80% of them is because they're usually not in the state at the time that the election happens, and so all he was trying to do is teach truckers to be then teaching other truckers how to get on the permanent absentee ballot list in
And
the
many
state.
of them are opposed to absentee voting, my husband being one, I finally got him
See?
on the permanent absentee
Getting them on the
ballot.
permanent absentee ballot list is such it seems like such a easy thing to do.
And they're like, I don't even have time to, when can I get it to the
Exactly.
ballot? I'm
So,
like, I'm your
add-
wife,
add
I can take
truckers
it.
To a coalition, like every Michigan trucker needs to be on the permanent absentee ballot list, like somebody needs to make that a mission and get that to happen.
If
Maybe
the
from
Democrats
that,
made that a
at
thing,
the-
we need to use it.
Yep,
At the military vote now is just atrocious with regards to removing the CAT card, overseas voting and stuff like that. And I know we won't get anything passed with the Secretary of State and this governor, but that has to go back.
the
Right.
Unicava votes,
Uocala.
yeah,
Yeah,
big,
I mean-
big issue.
It kills me. I voted absentee my whole military career, right? And it was snail mail, it wasn't this computer stuff, right? But the other thing that's very frustrating with that is it's a different sized ballot that comes in, right? So it takes a Republican and a Democrat sitting down there and transposing, and when you get over to the TCF Center or Hunting Place or whatever now, and you're 6-1 or whatever, and this group takes the military ballots and says, well, he didn't really mean Trump, he meant Biden. That needs to change, right?
Yep.
Along with the college votes, the outside, the college kids, I learned this being a canvasser at an election, right? A college kid with an out-of-state license can vote in our elections. But it's even worse than that, because there's no checksum in place to stop them from voting absentee in their state.
Right,
But it's worse than that, because if you're a freshman and you lived on Calvert College and you had your address as a freshman, 2 years later, if you moved out of that district, and Bernie Sanders was there in 2020, teaching these kids, and it was during the COVID time, right? If you moved out of your voting district into another district, you're still in that poll data book for 2 years, you go over here, you register over here, you can vote here, you can vote here, and you can vote in your state.
that's how we lost in 22, so we had all of these college kids standing in
abortion
lines
was
for
on.
hours. Yep, they voted for abortion in Michigan, and then they went home to Utah, they went home to Illinois, and they voted again, so.
Biden said it, they had the
I know.
most.
Yeah, there's so many different ways that they can cheat. Just-
Well, that's part of our problems, we don't tell Republicans to cheat. Republicans don't ever say, hey, this is how you scam the system, this is how you vote 3 times. I've never heard a Republican say that
Not cheating, you're not trying.
in 20 years, right? Except maybe just now. Go ahead.
Okay, this is from one of our, state delegates that are going, that couldn't be here today. What is your view of the role of God in choosing the GOP to lead our state out of government immorality and corruption and empower the MAGA movement in Michigan to return to our Judeo-Christian values, as well as secure these blessings undiminished to ourselves and our posterity, as stated in the preamble of the Michigan Constitution?
Oh, that's a great question. That almost sounds like AI wrote that question.
He's the same thing.
Yeah, he is.
This is not hard for me to answer. I'm personally a born-again Christian. Grew up Catholic. I got radically saved in my 40s, and I pray every day for God to help direct my path. My husband and I pray all the time for God to give us favor, to give us the right words, to put the right people in front of us all the time. So that part of my life is really easy, and Jesus is my savior. But at the same time, I believe as a Republican leader that it's also very important for me to not make that the only reason and the only thing that I believe the Republican Party should be about. We just won Michigan because of a huge movement within the Indian community, within the Hindu community, within the Albanians, with the Muslim community. Donald Trump brought the Muslim imams out into the stage. We were backstage with him at that rally that was in Novi like 2 weeks before the election, and he had just had this very important meeting for 30 minutes with Muslim leaders, clerical leaders in the back room. And we saw him right after the meeting, and he said, I think I should bring him on the stage. Do you think I should bring him on the stage? He said, some people are telling me it'll offend people. And I said, bring them on the stage. Nobody's ever done that before. And so the conservative family value message is not just for Christians.
Right.
It's also for the Indian families. I don't even know what faith they practice, but I know they're not Christian, but they have family values. They're pro-life. They love their children. They don't want porn in their kids' school. Same thing with the Muslim families in Dearborn. They don't want porn being taught to their sons and daughters in their schools. So my answer is I'm a Christian. Faith is part of everything I do as a leader, but I also am very open to all of the different faiths and non-faiths becoming part of the Michigan Republican Party and helping elect conservatives.
Well, as Christians, we should be doing that. We shouldn't be excluding them.
And
Right.
not only that, our forefathers, that was the reason why we have freedom of religion,
Yes.
freedom to worship,
Yep.
your conscience.
I can't stand communists and baby killers,
Mhm.
but I love anybody else who is anti-communist and
If we all
pro-life.
stand for the same value, obviously we have different, faith values, different things in our faiths that, we believe, but in general, overall, we believe in the Constitution and we believe, we're all looking for the same result. I mean, we all should be, everyone should be included and no one should be, excluded because they're not the right religion.
You're right, and in some ways, what you just said is if we are Christian leaders and we are opening our doors to Muslim and Hindu and other faiths, and they see us doing good for their communities, that's in some way evangelizing right there. They're seeing Christians
Yep.
doing good
It
for
absolutely
their
is.
families and their family values, so it's its own form of evangelism.
Bridge building.
Oh, please. I never want to hear those two words again. It was PTSD. I just heard it 6 times on the Zoom call.
You might have answered this. This was also asked in our Telegram group. Could you please ask what her plan is to address the disastrous Michigan Supreme Court elections? Just want to make sure that was answered.
Well, we sort of talked about it.
Yeah.
I would argue that it was a lack of funds for specifically that, when the party is running with all gears and they've got money coming in for House candidates and money coming in for, a Senate candidate, money coming in for congressional candidates, there is no money coming in for these nonpartisan races. So that would mean that it's the party itself. And again, the party is raising money just to keep their doors open and to keep messaging. They don't have like a bucket of money for nonpartisans. So
Maybe Elon Musk will stop.
we need outside organizations and outside money to come in and decide that this is, and you're right, it's so important. I mean, look at, even what's happening to the electors, our judicial system has been weaponized against the people. And these positions are more important than ever.
Paid time off and minimum wage, I mean, that's gonna kill us.
Yes.
I'm like totally changing the topic again here now, back to the vice chairs. I said this yesterday too with Senator Runstead. So at the state committee, I'm not on state committee, but I've been there as guest and I've been proxy. So at the state committee meetings that I've been to or seen, the vice chairs should be there, in my opinion, and giving reports to the state committee as to what they're doing, at least what they're working on. Maybe they haven't accomplished a lot yet, but at least what they're working on and working towards, and so we can see what's happening, and just not like, cause right now we have no clue. Maybe they've done something, but we don't know that. We can assume that they didn't do anything because we don't hear anything,
When Ron was chair and when Laura Cox was chair, the vice chairs all gave reports at every state committee meeting.
They don't even show up to the meetings half the time, so.
And, I don't know why that I think it got taken off initially by Karamo. It stopped, and then when Hoekstra became chair, they just left it off. And again, I don't wanna criticize any current leadership. Some of them are running for new leadership. I can tell you that Marion Sheridan, your grassroots vice chair, who's one of my best friends, I've personally never seen anybody work harder than Marion. She's gotta be almost 70 years old. She is just an incredible dynamo. And again, we talked her into running for grassroots vice chair. She will continue to do what she's doing, win or lose. She doesn't need a title to do what she does. And, I said that back when I ran for co-chair. I would have still fought for Donald Trump. I will continue to fight for America First. If I don't win this chairmanship, I will be fighting for Republicans in some capacity. Keeping people, involved and working towards electing Republicans is what we should all do. If you have vice chairs that aren't doing that and you don't know what they're doing, you should be holding them accountable. People need to speak up more and say it. You go to these state conventions and they hand out placards and they march around and people give nomination speeches and they win with what should be a very important position in the party. And then you don't hear from them again. It's not acceptable. I will be demanding more from our vice chairs, and I'll probably call them out. I'll say, why did you run for this? If you're not gonna do anything, you should probably step down and let somebody more serious run for it.
President Trump on runs that, anything about this 18-second video just got
Quick second, it just got the same thing, without hearing it, unedited, it just probably got sent to all the delegates. It's 18-second clip, and it says President Trump on Jim Runstead, click image to watch, so we're.
It's because he said his name once in the rally.
I think it's worth listening to.
Yeah, no, I know what it is. It's President Trump
did you
saying
say?
Lindsay and Runstead are great senators. I'm proud to have their endorsement. That was his only interaction with President Trump, so I'm not surprised he waited this long to do it. But yeah, play it.
It's short, yeah, cause I got it too.
Michigan State Senators Jim Runstead and Jonathan
I'm not
Lindsay,
listening to it.
they're great people. Thank them from the bottom of my heart. They gave us a beautiful endorsement. We appreciate that.
Jim,
So
they were endorsing
they
him.
endorsed Trump.
Yeah.
And then
So they
in
turned it
Novi,
around,
he walked out on the
Well-
stage and thanked them for their endorsement.
Delete.
because Jonathan Lindsay and Runstead spearheaded asking every state senator to sign an endorsement letter for Trump. They organized it. So that letter was presented to Trump, having all the members, I think except three, I think it was Weber, there was three, state senators that did not.
That is Senator Runstead's entire connection to President Trump, is he spearheaded getting
politics.
Senate, his is politics.
And he knew he was running for chair at that time. That's why he
So
was doing it.
Meshawn, you know Trump very well, so when Berry County is doing a resolution that we're sending to Trump congratulating on his win and standing behind him and all he's doing, so can I expect him to walk out and say, I would like to thank that Cindy Twitchell, chair of Berry County, is a wonderful woman, I really appreciate her.
State of the Union.
That's right.
I'll have a heart attack.
Oh, I would too. I actually have a serious question though. And this might be difficult to answer, but I read that your administration and your person running, you were gonna be picking people all out of the state, okay? Now, they may have misrepresented it out of the state party or out of state. You just said that your running mate is out of the state party, or not part of but he's been a part of politics, Michigan politics,
Michigan and Trump politics.
but not in the party. Is he from Michigan?
Oh, yeah, he lives in West Bloomfield.
Oh,
He's
okay.
born in Inkster, lives in West Bloomfield right now.
So
he's probably traveled to Mar-a-Lago 50 times.
Okay, so he lives within Michigan.
Yep.
Okay.
West Bloomfield.
Now, how about your administration that you're planning on putting in place? Are they
So
gonna
I
come
think
from
that's where
people
the
in
question,
Michigan?
Cause people are all worried about who people's, executive director is.
It's really important.
It is, because of what we saw with the last
Mhm.
administration
So
before
some of
Pete.
the last administration and Trump's team are who's helping me right now. I haven't hired any consultant, which is, I'm grateful for. I'm getting the help of people that are right now working in DC for President Trump within the White House that are helping me because they're friends of mine, because I worked with them on campaigns. I'm also getting help from Tyson Shepard, who is about to I think he's left the party, I don't know, but I get a lot of advice from Tyson. I think he's taken a job in Ohio, so I'm proud of him. He's gonna go work for a US Senate race in Ohio. I'm planning on probably bringing somebody in from out of state, just because we've had so much party drama that I don't want anybody to, say, oh, let me put it this way. If Jim Runstead wins or Joe Sella wins, I know exactly who their executive directors are, and I don't like either of them. So I wouldn't want to bring that same sort of feeling into my administration. And there's plenty of great Trump people from nearby states, young, aggressive people. The only person that I would like to have part of my administration that's from Michigan, and I can't say her name because I haven't really talked with her about it, is somebody that worked for the Trump 47 team. She worked for it in 2016 and 2020 and this past time. I've known her a long time. I don't think she's left the state yet to take another job, and
Not really.
I'd be interested in having her as my political director, so, without naming names.
And I'm really happy to hear how your viewpoint is on state committees, because Christy and I both filled spots that left on state committee about 7 months ago. And the state party has done nothing in a year and a half, well, 2 years, till Pete. Pete came in, did a great job raising money, getting Trump elected. That's really all he could focus on, him and his administration, and he did a great job doing that. But I was on grassroots
The
committee.
committees did nothing,
Committees did, except for policy and budget,
right?
did absolutely nothing. And I was on grassroots, and our first meeting we had after one of the state committees, they were like, we're gonna get our goal is to get the counties to work together and all that, and, start unifying, and, I mean, I came back to Berry County, I'm like, we're gonna do this and this and this, and then I heard absolutely
They're real good at stating
nothing.
lofty goals, but no action plans.
And never got
I mean,
contacted
that
again.
just, that just comes down to leadership. Whoever the committee chair is of your committee, if they're not gonna hold meetings and if they're not gonna implement anything.
So would that be one of your things too to implement, is at state committee meetings, having committee chairs also give a report
Oh, yes.
of what they're doing? Because if
that's
they
how it
stand up
used
and
to be
say,
done.
we did nothing, well then, that at least.
You'd be amazed at how well people can stand up and give a report and say absolutely nothing.
No, I do know that.
I've never seen such skill in chairmen that sometimes can get up and give a report, and it's really, they haven't really accomplished anything.
Cause it's been nice, I mean, Tim and I
That's
have
why I
known.
wanna choose that's leading back, that's why I wanna choose the chairmen of these committees, because I want to say to them, when I call and say, I'd like you to be the chair of this committee, this is what I expect of you.
Mhm.
And, the way I look at it, the chairman, we put a lot of attention on this one seat. It's literally just somebody to run orderly meetings, make sure things are done fair, meet with donors, and make sure good messaging is going out. The party itself is our 13 congressional district chairs, all of our county chairs, all of our state committee members. Those are the leaders. That's probably about 400 people. Those people need to be the people all leading. And if any of them are not, they shouldn't be in a leadership role.
Yeah, it's been nice, cause Tim and from Ionia County, I'm from Berry County Chairs. We've actually contacted with Kenny Clevenger, who's chair of Allegan, about doing a lot of our events together, you know, coordinating our
That makes
events
sense for
together.
In this region,
So,
right?
in our region, yeah,
Because
oh
we're
yeah,
small.
yeah, cause we're rural,
Right.
you
That
know?
makes sense.
I mean, where else do people,
We don't
where
have
else
hu-
do you
none
wanna
of us have
live?
huge populations,
Come on,
so
that's the
we're gonna
best
have
people.
better events and better speakers and a better draw if we do it together.
If we do it together, cause we don't have the money.
More counties should be doing that, for sure.
Oh, rural's best, come
Yeah,
on.
used to driving, it's no big deal to drive 45 minutes to get anywhere, so.
Oh, well, listen, I lived in the UP, I drove 85 miles one way to go to Walmart.
Right.
So,
It sounds like Joe
Now we
Cello's
get Amazon.
gonna be somewhere in town or Hastings next week, but.
No, he's gonna be at.
Right, well, that's,
Jefferson.
okay,
Hastings.
Oh, yeah, he's at the Jefferson.
and I just never really had much heard of him before, but is that, anybody catch the phone call that was kinda like the Zoom? In my little bit of interaction with it, and I just, with your take on it, with your, dealing with him, it seemed like he could fill in a space that was like, he had a captive audience. Like, I was curious, like, and that's kind of sometimes bored, you don't wanna have somebody who BS's and talks, a chairman that talks a lot and doesn't give any information. So, but I just caught in my little interaction, like, he's got a space here,
I'm sorry, who are you
fill it
talking
in.
about?
You know, like, you know, all of a sudden there was a little malfunction with, like, you know, the phone call, like, fill in, like, when you like even.
I can't wait till you hear him. I'm very vocal against my opponents. I have no problem telling you the reasons you should not support them.
I mean, it
One
might
of
be
them with
awesome
Joe is,
policy,
he
but-
doesn't answer questions. And so now I'm getting beat up, he's calling me, he's saying things that I'm venomous, that I'm toxic. But the truth is, it's because I am very publicly embarrassing him over and over and over. They'll ask him a specific question, I try to answer questions with specifics, he will just say words. And he's got an incredible vocabulary, like, wait till you hear some of these words, like, all these big words, and he says that he's a bridge builder and not a burner 15 times, and FaceTime with people, and all this stuff that he's done, and his resume sounds incredible, but in Michigan Republican politics, he has been nowhere.
So this is what
He's not a delegate.
his back, remember Tom Monahan, Domino's Pizza?
Yeah.
Okay, he was Tom Monahan's consultant, handing out Tom Monahan money.
He was the gatekeeper
He
for
was a
like,
gatekeeper
for like
for like
15 years.
15 years to Tom Monahan, then he went to run like three or four different congressional campaigns. He's never had a job in the private sector. He's always worked for either he's a consultant himself.
But he gets mad if I call him a consultant, but he's never had a job outside of politics, is my
Right.
point.
He's been in DC for the past 15 years, working for different congressmen and different
He said
nonprofits.
very vocal, never Trump comments in 2016.
But does he fill in? Like, it didn't seem like he filled in, he didn't make it smooth. I'm not a smooth speaker, I'm just not. I
What do you mean
kinda
fill in?
hop around, but I'm not trying to run the committee, I'm not trying to run the state.
In other words, he can't talk.
I didn't catch it in my little, but that was a little piece, like, I mean, he seemed a pleasant guy, he might be the awesome qualified, I'm not getting
He's
that, but
very
just.
pleasant.
Very nice.
Like, it just like,
He
had.
spoke for us, here.
But look at the never Trumpers who are now Trumpers.
Yeah, I just wondered about your interaction
I
with
don't-
Jay, is he
I
able
don't
to
fault
fill in
somebody
enough
for
that?
not-
No, he has talking points and he goes back to him over, he
See, right,
repeats,
he
he
kept going
repeats
back
his
to like
talking
things he
points
wanted to say, but it was like, you're not using this opportunity,
to talk to us. I get it.
you have us.
So I wanna, Jen Psaki, circle back a minute here, right? You mentioned, and I think there's a misconception, you talked about the paper ballots and the machines with the Republican Party, right? And the conflict and this and that, and we can't trust the Republicans. I don't think that's the issue at all. I think the push is, and I know it's state committee, and I talked to Cindy about this, we're trying to push for 100% paper ballots, and I can't remember if it's Wyoming or Idaho that just passed that.
Yes,
They're
they
going to
did.
paper ballots. So the argument was, well, we're all Republicans and we're not gonna cheat and this and that. That's not the point here. The point is, we want paper ballots. We're not saying we don't cheat,
And
or
so we want it as the statewide,
we
why
want
would
it,
it
so
be at
we
least
need
be
to
doing it as
set
the party?
the precedents here, right? We needed to do it. And that we can do it. I know at the one convention a couple of years ago, that we counted in the back room, right? That was when DePerno and
Yep.
Leonard and all them, right? And
April
we were
22.
kinda observers, canvassers and
Grand
stuff.
Rapids, April 22.
Yeah, and it matched up and it did really well. It took maybe a little bit more time because people aren't trained on it. But I know my wife's, they're part of a training team that does this, and they've got a system, Linda's part of it as well.
Our county has a hand counting team, we use the Linda Rand's method. And we are ready for hand count, we're ready to teach anyone how to do it.
Yeah, I supported the hand count then, I would support it now, I just don't want to be the chair that tells you how we're gonna have to vote. It's gotta be a vote on state committee and the majority rules. I can tell you that I know from being on the inside that the only reason a lot of people within the party fight against it is because of the cost of maintaining the hall. There's always this cost of convention. And that's the backside stuff that people don't see. Like, for instance, the horrific convention we just had in Flint, where we didn't even have seats on the ground. Well, the first congressional district all feels like they were totally victimized, totally set aside. You know, I don't know how the choice was made, which district to put up in the bleachers on the ground. Was it a little bit malicious? Maybe, I don't know. Again, I don't blame that on Hoekstra, that's a staff thing, I think, more than anything else. You know, staff make most of those types of decisions. But that place was cheap. It was only 15 grand. It was the cheapest venue the party has ever used. And so there's always this balance of, we wanna save money so that we can be doing good Republican things. One of the costs is going overtime. When you go over 5 PM, it is very expensive. That convention in 22 was one of the most conventions our party has ever experienced. And it was because of the hand count. It was because we had all these candidates.
Well, there's a lot of candidates.
And we had the hand count and we didn't have people really knowing how to do it. It took hours. And so the argument against
I
that for
left the county room at
tabulators isn't that we don't wanna
after
fight
9:30
for
that
paper
night.
ballots, it's that we wanna save
I
100
left the
grand.
county
I
room
just
after
think
9:30
if
that
we're
night.
gonna be the party pushing for that, we can't have a double standard and say, well, it doesn't work,
We'll use it for our convention, but we can't use it for our election.
You
That's
guys-
exactly-
For the first 20 years I
Exactly.
was a delegate, there was never any machines.
Right.
Everything was hand counted.
And
Everything
then the
was
hanging
hand
chad
counted.
came along and look at what happened, right?
Yes.
Here's the thing, I'm gonna defend that a little bit, because, well, first of all, we are using paper ballots.
Right.
But with all the disruptions that the disruptors have caused, it has extended the time period also.
Exactly.
And so it's not like, we're not just getting into the count, into the voting. We're dealing with all the shit
Yeah,
you
they
know,
won't even
for
pass
hours.
the minutes.
Yeah.
beforehand.
Right.
So then, like at the one in Flint, I was a tallier too, or a teller, and you know, D2, we were great. We didn't have any problems.
Point of
but
order.
it was other.
Point of order. Point of order. Just kidding.
Exactly my point. We were awesome. There were other districts that
And population wise, we're the second largest district, and
Correct.
we were the first or
that
second
had
one
to go
done
back
counting
and
every
recount.
time.
Wow.
We had to wait for them.
Because we had
And
a
then people got
method.
tired of
we had
sitting
another
and
good
waiting,
leader.
they wanted to go home and go to bed, and so they left, so then when we had to recount again, they weren't all there, or we wanted to have to re-vote, they weren't all there to vote again.
Yeah.
Plus the expense of going over, it's like, so it was, I mean, I totally get why the state committee did what they did this time, and there will be checks and balances to make sure that the tabulators will be correct, so I don't blame them one bit, and I'm all for it this time.
I'm not saying that, I'm just saying we're for it or we're against it, and that's the,
Well,
I mean.
If everybody had a Christie Wall, if every district had a Christie Walls running their
I can
Right.
teach them.
tallies, then we'd be.
There's part of the training.
That would be
Teach D9
great.
how to count votes, and we wouldn't be there for hours and hours.
It's a
Not
no-brainer.
hard if you have an
Well,
organization.
and part of the other
Yeah.
problem too, right, is the last districts that get their votes in are sometimes an hour after the first district got theirs, or longer, right? I know that was the case a couple of years ago, right? And, I mean, when you're
Well,
2 hours behind or
In
whatever.
their defense, in April of 2022, the district that came in really late with their ballots, they had a problem on the floor. That wasn't about the hand counting, cause we did tabulators there also,
Right.
and then we hand counted
Right.
the ballots. Their tabulators kept jamming,
Oh, okay.
so they were having problems on the
Get rid of 'em.
floor, and it took them 90 minutes later than
The
everybody else
ninth
to vote,
district
so.
has always been, I mean, I don't know what it is, an hour later, their numbers come in.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Gary's gotta leave, but he's the state delegate, so let's get
I
him
gotta get you.
another.
She's had enough.
Yeah, that's
Thank you for
patience.
joining
That's
us.
incredible.
Yeah, and 20 years from now, she'll be probably running for office.
There you go.
State senator.
She'll remember these days.
We have, this group called Michigan Republican Party Delegates, our group's been trying to find out who they are, they're from,
I think it's Mike Lavity.
Yeah,
That's
as JD.
That's the outside organization,
That
like I
wouldn't
said,
surprise
they're
me.
attacking things that they don't even realize, you know, they attacked me for organizing Operation Gridlock. I mean, everybody loved Operation Gridlock, so I don't know,
And the minute JD created a website that was MRP Delegates,
yeah.
they went and created MRP Delegates Press, like it's affiliated.
To make
And
it
it's
sound
not.
like,
we're
yeah.
just sort of moving as this is a potential Democrat.
I don't know what it
Because
is.
we don't know.
I know that they are not gonna
Yeah.
stop trying to stop me,
I
so.
mean, well, the thing is though, there's no information on them and we've had people try to look it up.
They're being very careful.
There's powerful forces against
So I'm
a
just
Trump
saying-
chair.
Have you been seeing the things about USAID and how the money gets funneled to some really illicit things?
Right,
Yeah, it wouldn't be surprising if that,
yeah, because
There's some of that
controlling the
behind that.
Michigan
Not right
Republican
now.
Party is super important right now. I mean,
yeah, Michigan is hugely important.
I use my super glue to found my people that live on that road.
You had no?
That's what I'm saying, so we're trying to find out who it was, so.
No,
And so we're
tried
just,
to
we're
find
just
out
spreading the
last
rumor,
Do you want us
we're starting to spread the rumor it's a Democrat.
I should probably get out here soon.
They don't want.
I spoke to these same people yesterday, so.
We're supposed to be your bottle face.
Oh, no ways. It was
You're my
tomorrow.
energizer buddy, that's what I call him. He just, man, I've never seen a boy,
Thank you, Matt
and
and Sean,
so
for coming.
dedicated
Yes,
to
thank
what
you.
he needs to get
Appreciate
done.
your openness.
He's been working with our youth chair
You
already.
guys are great. This has been fun.